Batman issue 39. This is Batman Beyond. I gotta say, as much as I love Dan Jurgens on Superman, he can spin a really awesome Batman tale as well. So in this, what's happened thus far is Terry has lost his memory. And unfortunately, I didn't really pay attention to this arc when it first dropped, primarily because, what was it? It's Aquaman, and there was a couple of other. Nightwing was another one, which was frustrating. Which, what was it? Aquaman, when he lost his memory during this time period, they called him Andy. And then Dick Grayson, he got shot in the head and he couldn't remember who he was, so he was saying, "Call me Rick." And at the time, I was saying, well, they should call it The Adventures of Rick and Andy. And then they came out with this, and Terry lost his memory too. And I'm just like, did DC at this time just kind of run out of ideas? However, with that said, I like what they did here because what it enables is it gives you a chance to introduce Batwoman. And that's what this arc is about, is introducing the, what do you call it, the Batwoman Beyond, essentially. And they have it, and what really makes, what stands out for me with this book is the fact that we don't know who she is yet. We've been introduced to the character prior, because I've skipped ahead, but I like the buildup. And we will eventually go through this whole arc. However, what makes this particular issue interesting, other than the appearance of Batwoman, is this is the return. We'll talk about it. Let's go ahead and dive into it before we spoil it. It says, since when does the ceiling collapse on its own? Some say Batman is dead, that you're his stand-in. Bad choice career. A choice so bad that it'll be the death of you. And right here in this nice splash page, this is the return of Blight. And what I really appreciate about Batman Beyond, as where the original like Batman adventure comic books that were basically from the, well, I guess I can't say that, because the animated series, the comic book matched up with the show. And that's kind of what happened here, where this leads into what, after Blight was defeated during the animated series, or the animated series of Batman Beyond. But with that said, what differs between the old animated series adventure cartoons and this is DC made it a point to show that this was the future. So like, even though we've seen future state, blah, 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 this is kind of showing that logically Batman Beyond would be the next DC choice, which would be kind of nice if they would actually do that instead of the sliding time scale that they've been doing for 40 plus years. Anyway, this is called First Flight, Part 3. This is Dan Jurgens writing, Inaki Miranda doing the pencils, Chris Sotomayor doing the colors, Travis Lanham doing the lettering, and Dustin Nguyen doing the cover. And I love this splash page. This very much screams kind of a Batman Beyond. Kind of the deco, like I know they kind of got away from it there for a while, but Batman Beyond still kind of had that Bruce Timm deco art style to it. And you can see the homage here. Blight looks like him, and she goes, "Blight, alive? You know of me. The problem is, I don't know you." And even though she gets some good jabs in at him, we can see that she's still great. So that's another thing that I appreciate about is when you're going to introduce a new character, even if they have some skill, and Frank Miller did this with Batman Year One. Yeah, I had to stop and think about it. Where Bruce comes back from his, even though the old Silver and Gold Age Batmans, he's already been kind of established and we get hints at his past. At least in Frank Miller's Year One, it showed that when Bruce initially tried to take to the streets of Gotham and gets his ass kicked by the pimp and he gets arrested and whatnot, he's saying that something's missing, something that's not striking the fear that I want. And when he's on the edge of death and he sees the bat and he goes, "Yes, I shall become a bat father." You can't have your character come in immediately and just be like, "I'm the bestest ever at everything," no matter what character it is. There's got to be a reason to root for them. They got to have a little bit of an underdog. And that's what you're rooting for here with Batwoman. She goes, "You are one of the richest men in the world, not to mention a reprehensible murderer, which is why you're better off with you dead. Speaking of dead, whoosh, who are you two, McGinnis? You know that Terry McGinnis is Batman? I'm the one who had his father murdered. Without me, neither Batman nor you, whoever you are, would exist. And what I like is how the pages, again, comic books being a visual medium, we see the fight, but then we cut to the Batcave with Matt, which is Terry's brother. And as we go into this, I'm not sure, my mind's a little all over the place, but I'll go ahead and spoil it. So spoilers abound if you don't want to be spoiled. But I think you go back a little bit earlier in the Jurgens run, and this was another good example of legacy characters where Matt finally finds out that Terry's Batman. And Matt becomes Robin. And it makes sense. Instead of just some rando taking the legacy character, we've known Matt. We've kind of grown up with him through the animated series. And we've seen him tease Terry, always saying, oh, you're working for Bruce Wayne. You don't have time for me, blah, 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 blah. But he's starting to grow up and mature and logically follows his brother's footsteps. So again, another way to implement a legacy mantle taken to someone that we know and care about instead of just someone completely brand new that we've never had a chance to really get to know or maybe a little insufferable. And an example of that would be the early Jason Todd days where no one liked Jason Todd. And that's why they, in the 80s, killed him. I mean, I'm glad that he's back now as Red Hood, but that's just kind of an example of how they tried to, because DC wanted to squeeze in a new Robin. Hence why in the Teen Titans, they told George Perez they wanted the Robin mantle back. And that's why they had him give it up at the beginning of the Judas contract. And as we went to the end of that, which we're still going through, he donned the mantle of Nightwing so that DC could give the Robin mantle to Jason Todd. And we all know how that goes. It goes to Tim Drake, blah, 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 blah. So I just wanted to kind of give an example of why this means something and why this is adding to Terry McGinnis and the Batman Beyond mythos. And Matt, up to this point, did not know who murdered his father. And he goes, Blight. My father? I know, Matt. Believe me. I understand. Your father was going to expose Powers' illegal nerve gas experiment. Powers had him killed in response. So this book has essentially three plots. The main plot, which is Batwoman versus Blight. The B plot, which is Bruce and Matt. And Bruce kind of explaining Powers and helping Matt grieve, kind of giving him a little bit of closure of he finally figured out what happened to his father. And then Terry struggling to try to figure out who he is. So he goes, but you don't have to worry. He won't get to you or anyone else for that matter. This new Batwoman, you think she has what it takes to stop him, Mr. Wayne? Hard to say when we don't even know who she is, Matt. But she's the only hope we've got. Go ahead. You still haven't told me who you were or what makes an inexperienced rookie like you think that you can possibly beat. Now, what I like about this, too, is we have no idea who she is. And if we go back a couple of pages, when this roof collapsed on her, she has an internal AI, kind of like Tony. She goes, Alfred, activated. Warning, radiation levels increasing. Prolonged exposure would be lethal. So even though we have no idea who she is, she's using an AI version of Alfred. How does she know Alfred? Questions. Because if Bruce doesn't know who she is, but she's using the Alfred AI, where did she get it from? How would she even know who Alfred Pennyworth is? Because your father threatened to expose Powers, and as a result, he was silenced. But that still doesn't explain how Blight's alive. Terry confronted him inside an old submarine. When Blight's radiation ran so wild that it would have killed Terry, Powers got out just as the sub sank to the bottom of the sea. We assumed Blight was dead. He should be. He's evil. Like you said, Matt, radiation doesn't die. And as he's saying that, we then see Alfred AI say radiation levels increasing. Prolonged exposure could be lethal. Trying my best to steer clear, but it isn't easy. I don't care what kind of training you've got, girl. You haven't you haven't fought the likes of me. And then we finally cut to Terry, who's basically living like a bum in the lower levels of Neo-Gotham. So you know those old movies that push the fun, romance, and adventure of life on the run? It's all bunk. Been so long since I've slept in a decent bed or had a hot shower that I've forgotten what it's like. I'd be a lot worse if we hadn't swiped that truck with food and supplies. There must be some aspect of your old life you can return to, Constance. Me, with my amnesia, I wouldn't know where to start. Uh-huh. During my time at Powers, I developed a mutagenic toxin that terrified people. I should have been a star, but a subordinate reported me for unlawful research, said I was trying to create a race of superhuman freaks. Warren McGinnis ruined me, got me and the whole company shut down. Once I was making millions, now I'm unemployable. So even though it may feel a little on the nose, I like how we're starting to see through all three plots that everything's starting to come together. It's just a nice little bit of storytelling. And then they essentially grabbed kind of like a retina scanner. And it says, I played around with the device that I use on the food truck, genetic retina scanner. If you're on file somewhere, and most everyone is, it'll tell you who you are. Shway. Let's see if we can finally find out who you are, mystery man. Zzz, anything? And it says Terry McGinnis. And Constance pauses. Well, what's the word? Who am I? Sorry, mystery man. The test was inconclusive. So even though she's helped him and they've made a rapport, she realizes who he is. And what, because we just, with that one little bit of dialogue, without like 100 million pages of dialogue, we just get that Warren McGinnis ruined me. And now she sees that she's face to face with his son. We didn't need 1,600 pages of exposition. We still get the battle. Where is it? Hold on. So I don't want to give everything away. But what happens is she eventually is able to get a hold. Constance is able to get a hold of powers. He goes, impossible. So everyone thinks. But if I don't get help soon, I will be. Radiation is consuming what's left of my body. I need a new one. One that can host my transferred consciousness. It's really you. Obviously. Can you help me or not? And she kind of looks at Terry. In fact, I know just the man for your job. Did you say job? For me? For sure, mystery man. At long last, things are falling into place for us. And then as we close out the book, it says, can't be sloppy. Can't even cut it that close again. We just get a silhouette of her face. Activate fireplace, 75 degrees. Have to learn from this because failure isn't an option ever. And so you're just thinking, who is this woman that has these means, that has the fighting style, that has an Alfred AI? And like I said, we've been introduced to her already. And it didn't even click to me when I first read it because this book hadn't been created yet. Yes, I'm getting old. But when I saw it, I was like, damn, that was such an awesome succession. And I can't wait to share it with you guys. And for those of you that have read this, please don't spoil it down in the comments for anyone that's newcomers. Let's let this organically progress for everyone because this was fun. Dan Jurgens is one of those that carried Superman through the 90s. And when I saw that he was, even though I was pissed that they took him off of Action Comics and took Peter J. Tomasi off Superman to give it to both books to Bendis, we're not going to talk about that. But anyway, I saw that he was on Batman Beyond. Of course, I dropped the Superman books when Bendis got on it, and I picked this up, and damn, am I glad that I read this run because it is so much fun. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever you get your action figures and comics and get this series. If you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate taking a minute, like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you mind hitting that fancy little bat bell next subscribe, that way as I get to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talk with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure that the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.